If the city was run sanely, this material would be the end of the Biden presidency. But it's not run sanely. First up is the news this week that the Justice Department has ethically collapsed. They concocted and came up with a plea deal for Hunter Biden that limits the charges to 2 misdemeanors related to tax evasion. And then there's an issue about false statements on a federal gun form that isn't even part of the plea deal technically, meaning he's not pleading guilty to a charge. They're just going to immediately divert him into some sort of program to erase the gun charge essentially from his record. Now, as you know, Judicial Watch had been investigating the way the FBI and the Secret Service had been protecting Hunter Biden, specifically on the gun charge, where his then girlfriend and widow of his brother took a gun of his and threw it in a dumpster near a school, I think. And the reports were that the Secret Service and/or the FBI went to the store where he purchased the weapons and vacuumed up documents. And we've been trying to investigate that through litigation for some time. But of course, the big deal is that this plea deal makes a mockery of the rule of law and justice. It obviously is not sufficient given the criminality that's been publicized about what Hunter's been up to, both in his laptop, through testimony of Tony Bobulinski, and just new information, for instance, showing that there were numerous years in which he evaded taxes that he doesn't have to pay anything for. And of course, he was operating, it looks like, as a foreign agent. Nothing's going to be done there in terms of criminal prosecution. I guess only Republicans get prosecuted for that. Think of Paul Manafort. You have bribery potentially there, conspiracy, and of course, that's just for Hunter. And by narrowing these charges, they protect Joe as well, because a lot of those charges necessarily would implicate Joe Biden based on all the evidence that's out there. So this was kind of this was a twofer in the last few weeks by the Justice Department. They set the table for 2024. Arrest Trump, come up with these slap on the wrist plea deal charges for Hunter that require no jail time, it looks like, based on the reporting, and thereby clear the board in terms of Biden corruption, potentially leading to the jailing of Trump just in time for the election. Now, the Biden gang, as suggested, the U.S. Attorney and the Justice Department suggested, well, the investigation continues. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because you don't continue an investigation by indicting in the middle of it one of the key witnesses if there's going to be more substantial charges against him. I mean, this is it, according to Hunter's lawyers. And I think Hunter's lawyers probably have more credibility than Mr. Merrick Garland and Mr. Weiss, the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, who's been slow rolling this case as well. And as we've been noting, this indictment is the result of a corrupt process, right? So the indictment is necessarily, the plea agreement is evidence of corruption. It's not accountability. That's kind of the crazy thing about it. And this is the statement we put out in response to the indictment or the plea deal of Hunter Biden. Again, misdemeanor tax violations and a false statement tied to a gun purchase. And the false statement, of course, isn't even going to be prosecuted, or he has to plead out to. Simply put, the Garland Justice Department's disparate treatment of Hunter Biden and President Trump is an abomination unto the law. The sweetheart plea deal with Hunter Biden is a thumb in the eye to the fair administration of justice. It is a miscarriage of justice whose chief beneficiary is President Biden. For far too long, Biden has avoided any serious investigation of his involvement in Hunter's corrupt foreign business dealings. The plea deal, which doesn't address the strong evidence of Biden family racketeering, is a sham. Garland has now cleared the board for Biden's re-election Biden's re-election campaign by arresting Trump and shutting down the Biden family corruption issue with this rigged plea deal. And by refusing to appoint a special counsel, Garland avoids having to issue a public report disclosing the facts and details behind this charade. The Justice Department has been irredeemably compromised by its politicized prosecutions and cover-ups. Congress has no choice but to initiate an immediate impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. In the meantime, Judicial Watch will continue its leadership role investigating and exposing the worsening Biden corruption crisis through our numerous FOIA and federal and state lawsuits. So this is just the beginning of the Biden corruption scandals based on the revelations that emerged immediately after this plea deal was announced. The revelations would show, as I said, it was rigged. The documents show, as released by the House Ways and Means Committee, a whistleblower who was the top criminal investigator at the IRS, responsible for investigating Hunter's potential IRS crimes or tax crimes, came forward, and his testimony, which was under oath, has really shocked Washington. Even the Democrats are a little bit nervous. This is what the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee said about this new information. The American people deserve to know that when it comes to criminal enforcement, they are not on the same playing field as the wealthy and politically connected class. The preferential treatment Hunter Biden received would never have been granted to ordinary Americans. And this is after he noted that IRS employees blew the whistle on misconduct at the IRS and the Biden Department of Justice regarding unequal enforcement of tax law, interference and government abuse in the handling of investigations into criminal activity by President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and retaliation against IRS employees for blowing the whistle on this issue. Whistleblowers describe how the Biden Justice Department intervened and overstepped in a campaign to protect the son of Joe Biden by delaying, divulging, and denying an ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden's alleged tax crimes. The testimony shows tactics used by the Justice Department to delay the investigation long enough to reach the statute of limitations. Evidence they divulged sensitive actions by the investigative team to Biden's attorney, and they denied requests by the U.S. attorney to bring charges against Biden. IRS employees who blew the whistle on this abuse were retaliated against despite a commitment IRS Commissioner Werfel made before the Ways and Means Committee to uphold their legal protections. Werfel is an appointee of President Biden. They were removed from this investigation. They were removed from this investigation after they responsibly worked through the chain of command to raise their concerns. The committee had acted in good faith with participation from Democrats and Republicans. Actually, Democrats voted against releasing this information, as the issues raised today ought to be a bipartisan concern. Hopefully we can find a path forward to continue to go where the facts lead us. Now, and then he says something about, the powerful and connected, which is all well and good. It's not the powerful and connected. It's Hunter and Joe Biden who are protected. No other wealthy individual would get this sort of disparate, this special treatment that Hunter got. And here's the material. You have, this material was released by the House Ways and Means Committee after a partisan vote. Democrats wanted to investigate it further before it was released, which is hilarious. There are statements and letters from the lawyers, and these two documents are depositions of Mr. Shapley and his associate, someone who worked for him at the IRS, whose name is still confidential. And I'm going to try to go through, as best as I can recall, the various issues that have been raised by Mr. Shapley. Shapley was a supervisory special agent for the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit at the U.S. Department of Treasury. So he's a senior investigator who supervised line agents in carrying out the investigation of Hunter Biden as that investigation related to potential criminal violations of the United States Code. So that's his statement that he had given pursuant to law to the House Ways and Means Committee. And one of the issues that he raised and that he knows has happened is that he saw that this infamous 1023D FBI document that documented the audio tapes allegedly made of Hunter and Joe Biden talking about their dealings with Burisma, the allegations of bribery that was sought by Hunter and Joe, $5 million for Hunter, $5 million for Joe, coercion that this Burisma executive faced or felt as a result of dealing with Hunter and Joe to engage in this bribery. And what had happened was that this information came in from a well-known source by a well-known FBI source, and Barr sent it over to the Delaware U.S. Attorney. Now, the Delaware U.S. Attorney, everyone is telling us, oh, he's a Trump appointee. Well, that's true, but it's misleading. U.S. attorneys in blue states are essentially political acolytes, or they're basically friends of the senators of those states. They don't move forward in the nomination process unless they're approved by the senators of the home state. So you have these various U.S. attorneys, and they're generally selected by the home state senators. And and whether it be Republican or Democrat, you know, it doesn't necessarily tell you their political allegiance. For instance, Mr. Weiss, who was appointed by Trump, had been a longtime attorney at a U.S. attorney, worked in the U.S. Attorney's office up there in Delaware, and he had been appointed as an interim attorney, U.S. attorney, or acting U.S. attorney by President Obama. It's a political position. So, I mean, Obama trusted him enough to let him run the office, the Justice Department under Obama. And so when it comes time for Trump to pick his U.S. attorney for Delaware, he was given this name, Mr. Weiss's name, by the two Democrats in Delaware who were senators. And that's how he got his job. So to call him a Trump appointee doesn't tell the full story. And you can see why the full story needs to be explained given Weiss's subsequent actions, including this outrageous and corrupt plea deal. Also, according to these whistleblowers, so you have Shapley coming out and saying this, and virtually everything he said has been confirmed to the extent it was possible by his colleague who was working with him on this case. So there are two whistleblowers. So Mr. Weiss evidently had tried to go to U.S. Attorney to get Hunter indicted on serious tax charges that go back to 2014 or 15 here in Washington, D.C., because that's where he was living and doing business at the time. And the Biden-appointed U.S. Attorney, Mr. Graves, here in Washington, D.C., refused to let him do it. And as a result, those charges have disappeared because it's too late. The statute of limitations has passed. Similarly, there were other charges that were sought in the Central District of California that seem to have been squelched by the Biden Justice Department. Also, Mr. Weiss himself, according to what Weiss told a whole bunch of people at a meeting that Shapley attended, had sought to be given special counsel status by Merrick Garland, and Garland declined. Now, in response to these allegations that are in black and white here, and there's so much other detail. For instance, there's a text message to, it looks like one of Hunter's Chinese communist business partners, and he's texting, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the text in front of me, but you can look it up. I'm sitting here with my father, and you better give me the deal, come through on the deal you promised, otherwise I'm going to tell my father, and, you'll be harmed as a result if you don't come through because of what my father will do to you. I mean, just naked intimidation and threats based on his relationship with his father. And the text was sent shortly after Biden was, I think it was in 2017, so he wasn't vice president. But obviously, he was a powerful political figure, and he was a putative candidate for president even at that time. And it further demonstrates that Joe was involved in all of Hunter's business dealings. And of course, they didn't want to do that. And according to Shapley, you had Biden DOJ officials intervene to warn attorneys for Biden that there was going to be a raid on a storage unit of Hunter's, that they restricted their ability to use Hunter Biden's name in certain subpoenas and discovery requests. They restricted they were restricted from asking about the big guy. So they specifically said, you can't ask about Joe Biden, it looks like. And then you had this outright obstruction where Weiss wasn't able to get charges filed that he wanted to get filed, which would have been much more significant. Reportedly, I think there was $8 million in income that he didn't pay taxes on that they never charged him with in terms of criminal tax evasion. So talk about special treatment. And so Trump gets arrested, and guess where Hunter was this week? Guess what his big deal was this week? He was at the White House for a state dinner with the Prime Minister of India. I mean, talk about in your face, we don't care what you think. We're untouchable. That's the Biden's White House approach to this. And Garland was asked about this at a press conference today. And he said, well, Weiss has full authority to do that, to do anything. I don't know how it could have been stopped. Any prosecutions could have been stopped. Well, that's not a response. Were they stopped? Did he ask you to be special counsel and you refused to appoint him as special counsel? Now, there's a special counsel looking allegedly into Hunter's handling of records, Joe's handling of records. And what was interesting is the New York Times asked me earlier this week to talk about the Hunter Biden investigation a bit. And I made the point again by not appointing a special counsel. The regulations require you to appoint a special counsel in the Justice Department if there's appearance of conflict of interest. It's, people obviously see a conflict of interest when Biden's Justice Department is investigating his son, especially when the allegations relate to Joe as well. And the response by an anonymous source in response to my complaint was that, well, we hadn't done special counsels for prior presidential family members in the past. Well, first of all, that's dishonest because it avoids the connection to Joe. But secondly, it's not true. I mean, they were targeting Donald Trump Jr. through the Mueller operation. So it's completely at odds with the facts. And the special counsel, one of the differences between a special counsel and a U.S. attorney, despite, I think the technical differences are sometimes overstated. But the special counsel is required to issue a report. So by avoiding a special counsel appointment for Hunter, for instance, under this plea agreement, let's say the plea agreement was the end of the road here, there would have been a report by the special counsel as to what went on and what they found. None of that is necessary here. So to me, what should be the response? Of course, Judicial Watch is going to continue its litigation, as I said. We've got federal and state lawsuits designed to uncover the full truth about Biden family corruption. At least dozens of Freedom of Information Act requests. I would say upwards of 10 FOIA lawsuits at this point now. I dare say it, no one's doing more to investigate Biden corruption through litigation than Judicial Watch. And of course, Congress has got to get on the ball as well. Now, there was an impeachment inquiry or articles of impeachment that were raised by Lauren Boebert, the congresswoman from Colorado, right? She wanted the floor to vote on it right then and there. And Republican leaders didn't want it to happen, so they shelved it. Oh, they said, no, it's don't worry, the process continues, but it's being buried in committees now. I mean, you could have had articles of impeachment, the way I understand it, voted on this week, just on Biden's failure to secure the border and aiding and abetting the invasion of the United States of America in a way never seen before in American history. And so, you know, as this astonishing evidence of corruption by Joe Biden and his Justice Department comes out this week, Republicans are essentially tabling impeachment of Joe Biden. But I think, you know, this shows what the Justice Department's doing here, not only with Hunter, but the targeting of Trump. It shows that there's no way, any Republican who says we have to let the criminal investigations work their way through, I mean, what earth are they living on that they think this Justice Department is ethically or legally capable of investigating Joe Biden fairly, or frankly, any members of his family fairly, in a way that American people can have confidence that it's being done on the up and up. And so Congress has got to do what it can do under the law, and I think impeachment is warranted. As a matter of fact, they don't have a choice. It's unavoidable if they're doing their job. And then secondly, or maybe firstly, you cut funding for, you restrict, you change the law related to how the Justice Department's operating. Who was involved in this effort to obstruct this investigation? Zero out their salaries. Defund the operations that are abusing American citizens now, like the operations targeting Trump and other innocents, Jack Smith, etc. Impeach Garland. Referred for criminal investigation Garland if he lied about his involvement in the Biden investigations. I mean, we can go through bit by bit, piece by piece, what the Congress is able to do, none of which they seem really willing to do. I mean, I hear, you know, every time I raise this issue with Congress, and I don't raise it that much because it's so frustrating, because I get the same answer each time, because I know you're concerned about it. So I say to staffers and members of Congress when I run into them, hey, what's going on with accountability? The American people, you know, we don't want to spend too much money, and, you know, we want the border secure. There's all sorts of issues out there. But they also want to make sure our republic is still alive after the Biden administration. And that means you have to stop the unlawful abuse of American citizens everywhere you can. And the typical response is, well, we're still investigating it, which is fine. I mean, they are doing much more. I mean, for instance, this material that came out from the Ways and Means Committee and the whistleblowers and the work of Comer and Chuck Grassley and Jim Jordan is light years ahead of prior Republican investigations, not only in terms of aggressiveness, but in terms of speed. So I don't want to overly criticize it. But on the other hand, what they're doing is obviously necessary but insufficient given the time frame we're in. And I don't mean because of elections. I mean, you wait 2 years, and it's too late. It's too late. And you can't just yell about someone after they leave office and think that's accountability. I mean, it's just not the way it works. So that's why Congress really needs to get on the ball here. And, you know, Judicial Watch will keep on pushing on this outrageous corruption. But I tell you, as I said, when I talked to Congress about this, or members of Congress, I said, well, we're talking about defunding the FBI's headquarters. I mean, you know, color me underwhelmed. Now, I understand the FBI wants some gigantic headquarters that would turn them into some sort of even more of a monstrosity than they already are. And I understand that. That's fine. But it's woefully insufficient in terms of reining in FBI abuses. It's woefully insufficient in terms of reining in Justice Department abuses. So there's an emergency, right? There's a rule of law emergency here in Washington, D.C. Congress needs to step up. And I hope the courts, for instance, start taking this more seriously. I haven't talked, I don't know what, I shouldn't speculate as to what the legal possibility of this is. But I wonder, and maybe the experts out there can tell me, you know, can a court, or would a court, given the circumstances of this plea agreement with Hunter, say, no. I have evidence here it was corrupted and obstructed, this investigation, and I'm not going to rubber stamp a plea agreement that's the result of government corruption. You know, based on my understanding, a court could do that. Whether they will or not, I leave it to you. But I think that's something that should be looked at and seriously considered. Similarly, with Trump's indictment, I hope the courts there shut that down as well, given the lack of the fact that there is no good faith basis to target Trump for mishandling documents that he had a right to have. I mean, that's the essence of it. The left doesn't want to deal with that, but that's the essence of it. And it was the prior position of the Justice Department in the Clinton sock drawer case. They changed their position, and they said, oh, all of a sudden, where we used to believe that a president deserved all the deference in the world because it's Trump, we're going to try to jail him and change our mind on that and say he deserves no deference that we gave every other president in American history under this law. I hope the courts see through that immediately and shut it down. But in the meantime, as I said, Judicial Watch will continue its heavy lifting for the rule of law with your support. You know, like I said, we've got Hunter Biden investigations and lawsuits going on. We're in Delaware about the documents that that Biden has hidden up there. We've got lawsuits against the archives over Biden corruption from the day when he was vice president, as it relates to his son and other entities around his son. We're going to sue soon, I think, about this FBI document related to the Burisma bribes, the $10 million in Burisma bribes that have been alleged by that source. We still haven't seen it publicly. I don't know why Congress hasn't released it. Well, I do know why Congress hasn't released it, because they don't think they're able to under law yet. So let's get a lawful version of this document so we can give it to the American public so they can see what it is they were trying to bury. Oh, by the way, that document was hidden from the IRS investigator I'm talking about, the bribery document. I don't know if I said that in the beginning. So there's a lot going on, but significant developments. I mean, if the city was run sanely, this material would be the end of the Biden presidency. But it's not run sanely. So it's something to be overcome by the deep state and their media acolytes and the Democrat operatives that can control and run our media. And so what do we do in response? We do what we can under the law, and we educate the American people. You call your members of Congress. You say this has got to be taken seriously. We don't want investigations world without end. We want accountability and punishment as soon as possible under the law. They know what to do. They just don't want to do it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.